Morning, everybody. My name's Emma Browning, and welcome to Future Proofing Your Business. And if I can get slides to move on, because they don't want to move on even for me now this morning. Right, so just a little bit about my background, and I'll be introducing you to my colleagues as well who are joining me on this session. So my background and career is a career of two halves, really. The first 14 years has been spent in sales and operations, and the last 21 years has been spent in HR, working for some well-known brands like Porsche Cars and Harley Davidson, as well as for a number of smaller local businesses, including Oxford Instruments. I set up Meraki HR in 2015 because I wanted to help ambitious SMEs to start up, scale up, or get unstuck with their people issues. Liz is now going to just do a brief introduction to herself. So I'll ask you to say hello, Liz, and tell everybody a bit about you.
Morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Liz Maudsley, and I'm the owner of Liz Maudsley Financial Planning. I specialise in helping businesses create financial education workshops, and I also look after my own portfolio of private clients. I've been in financial services for over 30 years in many different roles and capacities, and I set up my own business 2 years ago.
Lovely, thanks, Liz. And let me introduce you to Lisa Lloyd.
Hi, so my company, It's Time for Change, I set up probably about 10 years ago, based on the fact that when we get people right, we get business right. So I work with leadership and companies as a whole to help them become places where people can really thrive and be their best. And I'm a chartered psychologist and psychotherapist, which gives me a point of difference in terms of understanding what's really going on and helping people change.
Lovely, Lisa. Thank you very much. And I'm really delighted to be joined by both Lisa and Liz this morning, because their areas of expertise are second to none. So let's have a look at our agenda in terms of what we're going to be covering. So the first session is from myself, and this is about needing great people to future-proof your business. You don't have a great business without great people. But you also need your people to be free of financial worry to enable them to perform at their best, which is what Liz is going to cover for us. And Lisa is going to be talking about employee well-being, which we believe is at the heart of everything. We'll just then do a very brief summary at the end in terms of sort of next steps and how you can move forwards with any of this work. So you need great people to future-proof your business. You know, a business is nothing without great people within it. And that's what I want to talk about in this session now for you. So in terms of some statistics, we've got the highest ever number of vacancies recorded in the UK, which happened just a couple of weeks ago. So despite the news, perhaps which has been a bit doom and gloom with the pandemic, I hate to say the word, but we're going to say it. You know, there's been lots of forecasts of mass redundancies, and of course, redundancies have happened, but not in the volume that people were recording or expecting. And actually, the number of vacancies being recorded is at this all-time record high, which puts a real strain on you as a business. If you're trying to find people out there, you've got a huge amount of competition. So we know that unemployment is falling. It's not going up, it's actually falling, and it currently stands at 4.7%. Average wage increases, despite what inflation is telling us currently, so this was recorded at the end of 2020, wage increases are standing at 7.4%. And we know that it's a candidate-driven market. So essentially, you know, that means if you're out there and you're looking to recruit, the chances are if you find that fantastic person to join you, they're probably going to have one or two offers on the table at the same time. So you've got to make sure that as an employer, you're really attractive. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best people wanting to work for you or applying for you. And more importantly, not just being an attractive employer, we want you to be a great employer, because that's what's going to help you to retain the best people. So how you look after, manage, motivate and develop your employees will play a huge part in whether you're able to retain them. And this is what's known as your employer value proposition. And this is what we're going to talk about now. So what exactly do we mean by employer value proposition? It's basically what your company stands for and is all about. It's about your culture, and it's about your values. It should sum up what it's like to work for your business and in your business. But it's also about what you offer your employees as well. So that can be things like traditional employee benefits, such as holidays, pension, private healthcare, and life assurance. So the benefits are also important. But the bigger piece for me, and the piece that I see people making their decisions on now in terms of who they're going to choose to work for, is around that culture and values piece. So in today's market, it's much more about employee development, flexible or remote working, and of course, employee well-being. These are all things now that are much, much higher up on employees' agendas than they were even 5 years ago. And people always say to me, and still challenge me today, oh no, that's rubbish. People join us because we're paying the best money. Well, having been in my job for over 21 years, that is absolutely not why people join a business. They're going to join you because they've really engaged with the recruitment process. They've really liked the people that they've met and perhaps been introduced to. And if you've been lucky enough to be doing face-to-face interviews, they've got a good feeling about the business. But that good feeling comes from your culture and your values of everybody that's involved in the recruitment process. But it's also the inward reputation and the outward perception people have of your company. So that's your employer brand. So what do people think about you locally? Have you got a great reputation as an employer? Or is your reputation possibly putting people off from applying for you? So your employer value proposition, the employee value proposition is really about what you offer employees. So if we take a look now at the top benefits being offered in the private sector, some of these probably are going to come as a little bit of a surprise to you possibly, because the top benefits being offered in the private sector are now things like employee assistance programs. That's the #1 benefit being offered. Life assurance, death in service, childcare vouchers are all things that possibly you may be offering people. Free car parking is an important thing, particularly if you're living and working in the Oxfordshire area. That can be a real attractive thing to people. Cycle to work schemes, long service awards, and private medical insurance. So I don't think there's anything there that isn't something that you've heard of or perhaps even offering yourself. What's interesting is what people are actually looking for. So that's what's being offered, but how does that compare to what people are actually looking for as an employee? We know that employee well-being is very, very high up on the agenda. And of course, we wouldn't be talking about things like this now if we weren't talking about flexible or hybrid working. It's probably one of the top 3 things that people are asking for now when they're applying to adverts. And some people won't even apply to an advert now if it's not saying that there's flexible or hybrid working. Better holidays and a work-life balance are also one of the key things that people are looking for now from their employment. And as we said earlier, in terms of that value proposition, the culture and values aligning with their own culture and values is really, really important. So I've had people who've had 2 or 3 offers on the table, and they've joined a business who've clearly articulated their values because they felt they aligned with their own personal values, versus somebody else who was offering all the bells and whistles and all the benefits and the perks, but it was the values that really sold it to them. And I'm hearing that more and more frequently. Also, the younger demographic are definitely looking for an inclusive and diverse workforce. They want an employer who promotes this, who is going to give everybody the same opportunities, the same fair opportunities. So demonstrating your commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion is going to be really important if you're particularly looking at a younger demographic or a younger workforce. Gen Z definitely want a social scene at work. This is really, really important to them. And of course, learning and development opportunities has always been high up on the list for people. They want to know what opportunities they have in the business, what their career path is likely to be. And if these are things that you haven't got mapped out, you could find it puts you perhaps at a slight disadvantage. So let's talk about now how you tell people about your EVP. So it's no good you having all these wonderful things on offer if you're not talking about them. It's no good having a great culture and a great vibe and fantastic values if you're not telling people about them. They're not going to know. So how do you make sure people know about your EVP? So the first thing you need to look at is your company LinkedIn page. So looking at regular postings about not just the company news, but also people news stories. People want to know those human stories. So if you've just promoted somebody, for example, or if somebody's just had a baby, just got married, that's the kind of lovely human stories that people want to hear about and they connect with. Making sure that all your employees have got a consistent LinkedIn page and photo so it looks really professional and it represents you as a business how you want to be represented. For those of you that are aware of Glassdoor, it's basically like TripAdvisor, but for employers. For those of you that aren't, I strongly suggest you go on there and look to see whether you have got any comments about your business. So obviously very, very important that from a Glassdoor perspective, you create a company page and you start to get a reputation because people will look up your business on there, possibly before they even come for an interview. So maybe what you could do is ask your current employees to leave you a review. So you're starting to build that data and your reputation as a great employer. The other key area where you can tell people about your employer value proposition is your company website. Many businesses have got a dedicated careers page, and I go on and I look at them and I kind of look at them in horror because they've literally got a page where all that's on there is the vacancies that they're offering. It doesn't tell me anything about what it's like to work for you. So I want to know what your values are. How would you describe your culture? What's your vision for the business? I'd maybe like to see a day in the life of a customer service advisor, perhaps if that's a key role in your business. Maybe have employee stories, you know, somebody who joined you 5 years ago as a customer service advisor who's now a team leader. That's the kind of thing I want to hear about. I want you to demonstrate the career development, perhaps, of some of your current employees. A meet the team page. Talking about and actually being really clear about your benefits, your perks, and maybe even some articles about the social scene at your company. So if you've got a five-a-side football team or you have regular games nights, anything that brings your culture and your values and what it's like to work for your business to life, particularly in images, is really, really important. So in terms of next steps, if you want to future-proof your business, you need great people, okay? We've already established that, and I think everybody would agree with that. And having a great employer value proposition will help you to recruit and retain the best people. So let's review how you're doing against the things we've discussed. So that's something that you can go back and do within your own business. So review your culture. Have you written it down? I know it sounds crazy, and you probably think, oh, we don't need to write down our culture, but having a statement that describes what your culture is about and what you want it to be is really, really important because you can hold people to account then against these things and refer to them in the future. Make sure your vision as a business, where you're going, is clear because people want to know that a business has got a plan. You know, why would you join a business that doesn't know where it's going? And your values then are really, really key. So if you've got strong values, that's fantastic, but make sure you've articulated them and you can share them with people. Make sure you review where you're telling people about your employer value proposition. So your company website is the first place to start, definitely, and looking at those LinkedIn and Glassdoor pages, as we mentioned. Making sure that your benefits and employee wellbeing offering is competitive and it's what people are looking for. Because if you're not offering those things, whilst it's not probably the number one thing that people will be looking for, it's definitely in the top 3. Identify what needs some work. So if you've reviewed all of these things and you've identified there's some gaps, look at what you can then do to improve your EVP. And obviously we're here to help and advise you if you need it. So I'm now going to pass over to Lisa. So hopefully Lisa's going to be telling you all about employee wellbeing.
Thank you, Emma. I'm just going to whiz back a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about wellbeing in terms of what it really means. When you think about the term wellbeing, what comes to mind? Because people often talk about it in a sense of a bit of a bolt-on, and for too long people have had a perception around wellbeing which is too narrow, and that really can undermine what you're trying to do. So lots of companies, particularly over the last 18 months to 2 years, have been having lots of workshops to raise awareness around what wellbeing is really about, and lots of great strategies around self-care and resilience and so on. But this turns out to be like a bit of a tick box exercise, and then we kind of miss the point about employee well-being in a broader sense. And for me, I talk about employee experience, and it really fits very well with what Emma's just been talking about, in terms of the employee value proposition, because it's much more about how an employee feels when they go into the workplace. So it makes sense if you think about for yourself, when you go to work, if you're feeling valued and you feel good about what you do, you know that you have a sense of control, you know that you're able to be successful. Those are sort of needs, our essential basic needs, which need to be met well enough for us to feel good about who we are and what we're contributing to the company. So then that improves our sense of well-being, and that improves our performance overall. So we need to shift our focus from well-being being as a kind of a bolt-on to being much more integral to that whole employee experience. And it fits so well into what Emma's just been talking about. And I think it's really relevant because when you look here about this iceberg, and I really like this analogy because for me, this is how we often appear, isn't it? So you might be familiar with this whole notion that we have meetings with people, we get on with our stuff, we appear to be well, we appear to be present in ourselves. That's kind of what we let other people see. That's the bit above the surface, if you like. But then underneath the surface, are often lots of things going on that people are carrying around with them that others are unaware of. So we all have, and if you just think for yourself right now, what's going on for you right now, which is kind of part of who you are as a whole person. And I think when we start to uncover a bit about what's going under the surface, and we realize how much people are carrying around with them emotionally, we need to start to uncover that a little bit, because if people are carrying around too much, they can't engage in the forward thinking of your business. So you might have very good intentions about where you want your business to go, but people are preoccupied with what they're carrying around with them. And so a company has a massive role to play, because employees are carrying around, if they're carrying around feelings of worry about finances, and Liz is going to be talking about that in a moment, if they're worrying about the housing or worrying about caring responsibilities, any of these issues that we experience day to day, then we need to be looking at this in a bigger way. So we've got to start looking at what that looks like in terms of organisational culture. So think about where we are right now. Now, I know Emma's referred to the word, think about the pandemic, and we don't want to focus this on the pandemic, but we do want to recognise that where people are right now is in a time of real change. It's a time of uncertainty. It's a time of people making really big decisions about their companies and about where they fit into those companies. So you need to think about how you're responding to the rapid change, the rapid pace of change at work. And we're all having to adapt to new ways. It might be about flexible working. There might be things that are happening that don't fit right for employees individually. So you might, as a leader in your senior role, have very good ideas about what you're wanting to happen. But if it's not fitting with individuals' own values, or they don't understand where they're going, what's happening, then you might end up experiencing behaviour that's typical of resistance, which we see when people are being awkward. And I hear people say all the time, so-and-so is being really awkward. They're just digging their feet and they're just being grumpy. They're just not getting on with stuff, or they're just causing a lot of commotion. And actually, that's typical of resistant behaviour when people don't understand change. And change is really hard. If you think about the hand you normally use to brush your teeth, you can brush your teeth, automatically without any conscious thought whatsoever. If you swap hands, it becomes really clunky. It takes a lot of effort, because the stuff we do day in, day out is automatic. It's unconscious thought. We just do it because we have all the neural connections, which are really good. And that mean these things can happen without conscious thought. When we're doing something new, we have to consciously engage with it, and that takes a lot of effort. So when people are going through a lot of change, as organisations are at the moment, it puts a whole lot of extra pressure on employees in terms of what they're carrying around with them, and that makes it harder. So we need to think about these questions. And I think when leaders are going through change, often we focus on the operational side, we focus on the functional side, like this is where we are now, this is where we want to get to, this is what's going to look like, this is how many days people are coming into the office or working from home. They kind of focus on the very practical side. But often people forget to focus on the emotional side. And unless people are emotionally engaged with the journey, you're going to experience resistance. So you can have a brilliant concept where you want your company to be in the future. But if you haven't got your workforce on board at an emotional level, they're going to be dragging their feet and potentially causing quite a few problems and potentially leaving. So, we have to understand the why. That's a fundamental human need. If we don't understand why we're doing something, then we tend to resist it anyway. But you have to be clear about these answers, these questions, and you have to make sure that everyone around you has a clear response that is in line with what you're thinking. And it's no good assuming, because often people say, oh yeah, of course they understand what's going to happen. Of course it's okay if they make mistakes. But what we think is often very different to what other people think. Everyone's perceptions are very unique. And if we don't deal with these questions and look at them, then actually the reality is lots of people will be experiencing that sense of burnout, because they're just trying to cope with so much uncertainty, so much change, so much worry about what the future is going to look like and does it fit for them and their values and their new role if that's changed, that it can become very stressful and very overwhelming very, very quickly. So we have to look at what's going on for people and their own experience of what's the reality in your company right now. But for that to happen, it needs to be within the whole culture, which is one of psychological safety. And again, this touches on what Emma's just been talking about in terms of your culture. So when you're looking at developing your culture and writing it down, you've got to be thinking about, what are the behaviours we'd be seeing? What are, what people are going to be feeling? What are people going to be hearing in your culture? So are we going to be hearing lots of positive recognition, lots of positive feedback about what we're going to be doing? Are we hearing examples from our leaders in our company about their mistakes they've made, or how they're learning from something, or how they're stuck with something and they're actually seeking advice from other people across the board? So are people modelling what we want? Are people being given a voice to speak up? Are people's roles and understanding clear enough? Because actually there can be, particularly between departments or between roles, confusion about who's doing what and how that looks. So we need to be looking at the whole culture, and that's incredibly important. So if we take a moment just to think about the impact all this has, the reason we need to look at this is because if we ignore that essential part of looking at your workforce and their emotional response to it, it will play out in terms of how people behave at work, how they behave towards each other, how they are within themselves, how they're able to perform, and so on. And we know that change is likely to increase emotional arousal, and that's going to increase the likelihood of people being in a stressed zone. So if you look at the chart here, you ideally want to be in that orange zone in the middle, because that's moderate stress. And I tend to refer that as stretch rather than stress, because I think when people talk about stress, we tend to normalize unhealthy levels of stress in terms of that's what's to be expected. And actually, I would strongly challenge that, because we know that when we're in a high stress place, it really drops our performance. We can't function very well. When high emotional arousal blocks our cognitive brain, our ability to problem solve and think rationally and plan and so on, how do you expect people to be able to work well? So we need to be very clear about getting the conditions right for people to be able to be in a stretch zone. And when we ask employees, they have loads of ideas about what are the things that tip them over into the high stress zone and what they need to be able to perform at their best. but we often forget to ask them because we're too busy with the day-to-day running of the business. So this is a really critical time for checking in with employees, with our workforce, and saying, actually, where are you? Have these conversations with your team. Where are you? Where are you today? Because this will change from today to tomorrow. This will probably change from this morning to this afternoon. Where are you, and what's going to help you stay in that healthy orange zone? And then in terms of looking out for the kinds of behaviours that you might see that would suggest that people are moving into the high stress zone, we can look at some of those behaviours here. So, if people are becoming more sort of anxious than normal, they're appearing to be more anxious, or they're appearing to be a bit more argumentative, or they're just struggling to make decisions, they're not as interested in the kinds of things that used to be, they're struggling to concentrate, or they're more upset. These are the kinds of behaviours that we need to be looking out for, because if you're noticing those, it's a sign that people are beginning to move into the stressed zone. And if that's the case, then we need to act quite quickly and start to ask the question. So this is a really good place to start focusing with your teams. So when we think about whose responsibility this is, and I asked this question yesterday to a big group of people, some people will think, oh, this is, our HR deal with this sort of stuff, or this is the managers who deal with all this sort of stuff. But actually, it's everyone's responsibility. And I think when we start to realise that everyone has a part to play in this, it makes it much easier, because if it comes down to one particular person or one particular role, one particular department, it very much becomes a bolt-on, and then it doesn't work. So this has to be about joining all the dots. So look at all the people in your organisation and look at what their role is. At that point, everyone can then see what their part is in achieving a work culture where people can thrive and they can be their best. So we need to look at the responsibility that each person has. And for leaders, they need to be aligned, they need to be confident about what they're doing. And that sounds really obvious, but it still amazes me how many leadership teams I work with who think they have a clear vision of where they want to go, but actually you start to explore it and they want slightly different things. They've got slightly different interpretations of what's going on for the future. Managers they get a hard time because they have a lot on their plate and they're supposed to be doing these amazing things with their teams. But there's a stat that I came across recently that suggests that 68% of managers are accidental. So that means that 68% of managers haven't been trained to become managers. So have you invested in your managers in terms of how they know about leading their teams well and how to look after themselves when they are getting a huge amount of pressure to do the right thing by their people? We've got to look at people who have a mental health role and not leave everything to do with mental health and wellbeing to those people, but make sure they're integral to the whole organisation. Make sure your individual employees, if you're wanting to future-proof your business and wanting them to be there for the duration in terms of good performance and seeing good development, they need to be prioritising self-care. And we know that employees are wanting that and that they are likely to walk if they don't get the opportunities to do that. So make sure you're giving them the opportunities to prioritise what they need to keep themselves in the right zone, so they are able to perform and that they function at their best. And then I think finally, I would say that you need to be thinking about what good looks like. And this is just something I wanted to leave you with, in a very, very simple scale, but a sense of being clear, what does working in our company, if our company culture is at its best, where people are really thriving, people are ready for the future, people are embracing change, they're on board with where you're going, they're excited about what you're trying to achieve, what does that look like? What does a 10 look like? And then as soon as you can start to break that down a little bit, that really, really helps. So it's about breaking that down and having a very, very clear vision of what you're working towards. And then identifying where you are on that scale. And once you've identified where you are, being able to identify the small things that each person in your organisation needs to do to be able to move you up one step along that scale. So I think I would leave you with that as a place to begin to look at, where are we now, where do we want to get to, and what are the small things that we need to do to start helping us move there. So I'm going to hand the controls over to Liz.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking to, we got her yet? Should be. Sorry about this, ladies. There we go. Right, thank you for that, Lisa. Thank you for some really great insight from Emma about what employees are actually looking for in terms of well-being. And also what I found really interesting then was the insight into the behaviours that manifest when employees are stressed. So what this session is going to look at is the importance of poor financial well-being and how better financial well-being in the workplace can make a big difference, and the role employers can take. So we've already heard motivating and retaining employees is fundamental to the long-term success of your business. And to succeed in today's busy world, employers quite rightly focus their time and energy on business priorities and objectives. As a result, many employees have limited time to actually understand and look after their personal finances. This can have a significant impact on performance and their overall sense of well-being and stress. In fact, we know that 1 in 4 workers have reported that money worries is their number one problem in terms of their ability and affecting their ability to do their job. So let's have a look at some of the key issues surrounding poor financial education. Question number 1, these issues will actually highlight the importance of helping financial education and well-being in the workplace. So what percentage of employees, staff state that financial matters are their primary cause of stress? You'll actually be surprised to know that it's 59%. So over half of UK adult employees state that money concerns continue to cause the most worries for the majority of people. 26% of employees worry about money on an ongoing basis, and this actually outweighs worries about careers, which is 22%, health 18%, and relationships 14%. And let's face it, the global pandemic has not helped that at all. Moving on to the next question. Oh, sorry. So overall, 84% of employers feel that there is a need for financial education, but what percentage of employers actually offer this service and support? Is it 30%, 40%, 50%, or 60%? Well, Emma did mention that 80% of employers do actually offer counselling, but only 40% actually offer counselling and financial education. So if most employers feel that there is a need for financial education, why do less than half provide it? Often money, talking about money, is the last work taboo. It's because it invokes a sense of shame and guilt, actually, in a lot of people. It's a very emotional and difficult topic to talk about. So finding ways of dealing with financial stress in the workplace seems too difficult for people. Question number 3. So on average, what is the average business cost for every day lost through absenteeism caused by financial stress? Is it £50, £100, £150 or £200? So the average business loss is actually £150 for every day lost, which is a staggering 1.56 billion over a year. And that is actually attributed specifically to poor financial well-being. So how much somebody earns, where they live, what industry they work in it actually makes very little difference to how financially healthy someone is. A third of C-suite executives and 30% of managers have poor financial well-being. So those earning between 10 to 30,000 have almost the same level of financial worries as those earning over 90,000 per annum. So in conclusion, poor financial well-being is not about income or seniority. It can affect every single person, no matter what the situation. So finally, how many private sector workers have taken time off work due to their financial well-being? Actually, the answer to this is 500,000 500,000 people have taken time off because they are worried about their finances, and the actual cost to the business on average can be as much as 17% of the overall payroll. So thinking about your business, if you don't have an option where your individuals can talk about money or create an environment, it could actually be costing the business up to 17%. So what can you do? What can your business do to improve financial well-being as part of your overall well-being strategy? Well, actually, it's about providing a safe environment, and it is very much part of something that an employer can add to their overall well-being strategy. And whilst we know that looking for new people and retaining people, it's a big factor, the sense of well-being, we do know from the previous questions that less than half of businesses are actually offering some sort of support around managing finances. So how can you do this? Well, you can actually create healthy financial habits. And by that, we mean helping employees to take control of their finances. It's about understanding that your company is full of individuals with individual needs, which is something that Lisa explored in the previous session. Most businesses do actually offer some form of financial planning, which is what Emma was talking about when employers say, this is what we offer. Why don't you come and join us when you're trying to recruit good people? And it takes the forms of things like pensions, protecting income due to sickness, and life cover, making sure if someone passes away, their family are looked after. Some businesses actually offer a more individual service by providing financial advice. But often it's not possible from an affordability level to do that, or so we think. But what's really, really important is that we give employees the tools and the access to help them as individuals to manage their own money with the human touch. So we're not going to add any additional cost or workload to you as a business owner. It's about helping your individuals within the company to improve their overall financial well-being by taking control themselves. But in order to do that, we do need to understand why more people don't have a financial plan, which we know leads to better financial well-being. So the three key reasons why people do not seek help with financial worries is, one, from a business perspective, it can be seem to be costly, but also from an individual, how much is this going to cost me? What is the true benefit and value? And again, building that value into your culture, we know will have a significant impact on the overall well-being of your employees. It's also about trust. Who do you actually invite into your business? You have a duty of care to your employees to invite somebody in who's going to really talk about very personal things. You need to make sure that there's professionalism, there's transparency, and that they're not going to be bamboozled with jargon. And the third key reason is many people just simply assume that they need to be wealthy in the first place to have a financial plan or to be able to develop their financial habits in a more healthy way. That's absolutely not true. I would say, as a generalization, up to the age of 40, it's about building wealth, starting off, putting the right habits in place. When you get to 40 to 60, it's about growing that wealth, and making sure that you're really making the most of everything that's available in terms of tax allowances and savings and investments, etc. But then afterwards, when we move into the 60 plus range, it's about not only protecting what you've made, and also making sure that it's going to last for the rest of your life and that it is actually passed on to your nearest and dearest in the most appropriate way. So there's many different stages of looking after your finances. And I think sometimes people just find it scary. So what does financial education mean? Well, essentially, it's a partnership between employers and employees, and it's about teaching people how to become more financially aware, and it is in a safe environment. It's sponsored by you, the business owner, to make sure that your staff and workforce have access to tools to really improve their financial well-being. Why? Why do they need to become more financially literate? Well, the goal of financial education is to help people to feel confident and in control of their finances. And we know that will lead to stress, which in turn will help with engagement, their ability to focus on other parts of their life. Yes, we want them to focus on work, we want them to be better at what they do, but ultimately their overall work-life balance and how they perform will have a massive impact on how they are at work, how they interact. I mean, the benefits of being financially secure and having a real sense of confidence around managing your money are untold. So how do you make it happen? Well, as Emma said, the culture in the workplace is super important to attracting and retaining good quality people. So absolutely make it part of your culture. So what does it look like? What does financial education in practice look like? First and foremost, as we've said, it's about giving control to your staff and employees. It's not about you doing it for them. And it can take many different guises. Basically, I create bespoke sessions tailored to your business requirements. Now, it might be it's a one-step presentation session that really just touches on all the different components of financial well-being. Typically, though, with my business clients that I work with, it tends to then form a series of 3 to 6 sessions, for example, and they can be accessed remotely or in small groups face-to-face. And I'm quite happy to facilitate those in whatever way works best for the business. Particularly with what we've just gone through with COVID, everything has been remote, and that's actually worked really, really well. What sort of topics do people want to look at and explore to make sure that they're getting the right habits in place? How to plan for retirement and specifically looking at what you have already put in place for your employees has been incredibly popular with the businesses that I work with, and also protecting the lifestyle against unforeseen events. That looks at wills right through to estate planning. We've just gone through the biggest income protection ever in the history of this country with the furlough scheme. Imagine what would have happened to so many households and businesses if we hadn't have had that financial support from the government. So really, the sessions are about taking an in-depth look at how an individual can create a financial plan to satisfy their short, medium and long-term goals. So basically, we're taking the stress out of money. So quick examples in terms of what do some of the sessions look like. Retirement, as I said, is hugely popular. There are so many questions in terms of what does retirement mean for me? Everybody's different ages and stages, different income requirements, how much will be needed, different assets in terms of what people already have, and also what are the tax implications. Pensions are complicated, but forget pensions, think about what retirement lifestyle and what retirement income you will need. This session will really help to make that a less complex area for your employees. Sorry about these buttons there. Okay, another session in terms of protecting, which we talked about in terms of what furlough meant. This is really about building financial security as an individual, and it touches on all the key aspects of this. Whether you're looking to save, invest, retirement, we've touched on. It's not just about pensions. Keeping the house, the main residence, the roof over your head, and what happens when things do go wrong if you can't earn the money, or if somebody near and dear to you passes away, and making sure that those valuable tax reliefs that we do get from the government, that we are using them and not losing them. So again, there's some great sessions that can be built out of those topics. So getting it right, sorry. So what does financial education and what does investing in a program that gives financial education to your employees, what does it actually deliver? fundamentally financial peace of mind. And in terms, we know that when people are less stressed about money, they can focus on other aspects and other areas of their life. So what you will see manifesting is some of those behaviours that Lisa talked about when people don't engage, and you can see that something's not right with that individual. Well, it could be money that is their key worry at this time. It will help to reduce that stress. So it will lead to a happier workforce, which in turn is a stronger and more engaged workforce. And looking at those retention elements in terms of overall well-being that Emma talked about, it will really have a positive impact on that strategy. It will provide individual financial confidence, which again, I've just mentioned, will lead to less stress. But from an employer perspective, and from what you want to do in terms of the culture and the values and the way your leadership is perceived, it will be a much more comprehensive strategy for protecting the well-being of your employees. So there are some of the key benefits that I've seen in the many businesses that I've worked with. And in terms of the financial education programme, we always ask for feedback, and we also tailor the topics towards what your business is looking for. So, feedback, I'd just like to finish in terms of feedback. This is from the Co-op, which is one of the companies that I've now provided financial education sessions for over the last 2 years. And I can see a massive improvement in how the individuals that I work with have really come to grips and got to grips with becoming financially confident. You know, I always try and make the sessions relevant, accessible, easy to understand. I always try and make my presentations something that makes people feel that it's what they want to do. Sometimes people are already on the right track. It just gives them that sense of clarity and confidence to know that. So if you would like to consider talking about or setting up financial education and how that can be implemented in your business, then we would love to talk. So I'd like to hand over back to you, Lisa.
I think it's coming back to Emma.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Well, you got that back?
Some really interesting insights from everybody. So thank you, Lisa. So you know, really excellent insights about how people's well-being, you know, all those things that are going on underneath the surface can impact productivity and their ability to focus, etc. And also, Liz, I think it's really interesting. Financial well-being, I think, has been forgotten for a long time, but actually it's starting to really be appreciated, I think, by both employees and employers, that it can be a huge cause of stress, leading to all the things that, again, Lisa talked about. So clearly, you know, we've shared our insights with you in terms of what we believe can really help you to future-proof your business now that we're coming out of the pandemic. If you'd like to talk to any of us regarding, you know, our areas of expertise, then please do get in touch. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.